there's a big debate in Australia, has been for many years, but it's become much more pronounced in recent times for obvious reasons, that we are too dependent on China. We need to diversify our trade away from China. But the reality is China is what it is, and there is a massive complementarity between the Australian economy and the Chinese economy, particularly in resources. Not only, I mean, I think that's big complementarity in services, hence the huge tourist and education trade we do with China. That's probably more readily diversifiable, but not the resources trade. And iron ore and coal basically underpin the bulk of the trading relationship. So there are no other markets. There's wishful thinking that somehow we might replace China with India. It's not going to happen for many reasons. And China is many, many more times the size of India economically. And ultimately, you go where the money is, and China's got the money. So I don't think we'll be restricting trade, and the Brazilians would be more than happy to fill in the shortfall in iron ore from Australia. So it's not in Australia's interest to do anything like that.
Sure.
What's in Australia's interest, though? Sorry, but what's in Australia's interest is really to try and get the relationship back on track. And what is particularly pernicious at present in the domestic debate is that there are commentators and even politicians that are weaponizing the relationship and delegitimizing economic interests. So if senior business people speak in favor of improving bilateral relations with China because of the economic potential or the economic loss of having a bad relationship, these people quickly get demonized and accused and attacked for putting commercial interests above what's so-called national security interests and so-called values. And so, but a fundamental element of national security is economic security. So it's not illegitimate to be supporting the economic relationship and wanting a better relationship. It is actually core to our own national security to have a strong economy. And for better or for worse, Australia's strong economy derives largely from its trade with China.
Why is it pursuing this path? What is driving this? You know, I mean, Australia has its own mind to try and do its own thing, but why is it doggedly pursuing this path with the US, obviously?
Yeah, well, I mean, what you're describing is what I meant by saying that China policy had been weaponized. That it's now become a highly contentious policy. It's used, China relations are used to attack political opponents in Australia. And unfortunately, China's own behavior hasn't helped any of that. So threats by the Chinese ambassador to use economic coercion, actual economic coercion as part of China's statecraft has been exercised against Australia. The freeze on high-level diplomatic contact, all of that has not helped the debate in Australia. And there are many people who legitimately feel that Australia is being pushed around by China and needs to stand its ground. I mean, that is a view, and there's a degree of legitimacy to that view. But unfortunately, you now find yourself in a situation where, as you say, you create the impression to some extent that Australia is behaving petulantly. We need to get back to much more diplomacy in the relationship. And unfortunately, the foreign policy with respect to China is now controlled by Australia's security, intelligence, and defence establishment, not by foreign policy and diplomats. And therein is a big problem, because so much in diplomacy is not about what you say, but it's about what you get. And we've lost any sense of that now, and we have very ill-disciplined government. Ministers feel they can say anything they like about the relationship. It plays out very badly, of course, in Beijing, and we're not actually advancing any of our interest in doing this.
Australia would never do this to America, and yet they are willing to do it to China. Why is that? Because it's a communist regime, or because it's the government runs, you know, has that legacy, or because maybe Australia never had any respect for China/Asia. It is sees itself as a Western, sovereign, and lines itself up with, that series of countries. What is it that about China? I mean, I'm sure Scott Morrison wouldn't be having war words with, Donald Trump. So can you explain that sort of psychology around it?
Yeah, there are many facets to that. And I would certainly say at the outset, though, that it's not that Australia does not see itself as part of Asia or has any difficulty with being deeply interconnected with Asia. Far from it. And I think we've had 40, 50 years of policy that sought to deeply integrate Australia with Asia. And you can see it around the streets of Sydney and Melbourne or anywhere else in the country. We are very much integrated and part of Asia. China is a problem because China's the ascendant power and it's challenging the dominant power, which is the United States. And our values and system of political and social organization is very different than that of China's. And so we are seeing a world order in which we were very comfortable in the old order, where global leadership was provided only by the United States, and the United States reflected our values. An order now that's changing with China's ascendancy. And China is something of a revisionist power and wanting to create a different order. And we do not identify with China's values, nor system of political and social organization. So we've been shocked, if you like, out of our comfort zone and having to come to grips with this new reality of the new world order. And we're taking a very long time adjusting. We will one day, but for the moment, we're going to wear quite a bit of pain. And part of that stems because the United States has adopted a policy of strategic competition with China. Now, you might expect the ascendant power to do that. That makes a lot of sense. The dominant power. You might expect the dominant power to adopt a posture of strategic competition with the ascendant power. But we should not be part of that.